A millionaire's unexpected early return home shattered the perfect facade he'd built around his life. What he witnessed that day would forever change how he viewed the woman he planned to marry. His response to finding his fiancée mistreating his elderly mother wasn't just surprising, it was absolutely shocking. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Adrian Vainar stood at the panoramic window of his estate, gazing across the manicured gardens that stretched toward the horizon. The morning light caught the subtle gray at his temples, a reminder of the arduous journey that had brought him here. At 42, he had amassed more wealth than he had ever dreamed possible, as a child sharing a one-bedroom apartment with his mother in the poorest part of town. The financial papers called him a visionary entrepreneur. Business magazines featured his estate on their covers. Yet these accolades meant little compared to the quiet satisfaction he felt knowing his mother now lived in comfort. Adrian turned from the window, his footsteps echoing against marble floors that had been installed by craftsmen from across the continent. A far cry from the cracked linoleum of his childhood home. "Tea, sir?" His housekeeper appeared with a silver tray. "Thank you. Is my mother awake yet?" he asked, accepting the steaming cup. "Miss Era is in the garden pavilion. She rises with the sun, as always." Adrian smiled, remembering how his mother had always been the first to wake, even after working double shifts at the factory. Back then, Era would prepare his breakfast before dawn, ensuring he never went to school hungry, despite their circumstances. Now, despite having a full staff at her disposal, she maintained those early morning habits. He found her exactly where the housekeeper had indicated, seated on a bench with her walking stick resting beside her. The morning light softened the lines on her face, evidence of years spent worrying about rent payments and medical bills. "Good morning, my successful son," she greeted him with a warm smile, patting the space beside her. The self-made millionaire sat down, taking her weathered hand in his. "All this success means nothing without you to share it with," he said softly. Ara squeezed his fingers. "I'm proud of you, not for this," she gestured toward the mansion, "but for remaining the kind boy I raised." Their relationship had been forged through hardship, through winters when they couldn't afford heating, through Adrian's scholarships that finally opened doors, through his first business venture funded by Ara's entire life savings. While other wealthy men displayed their sports cars and vacation properties as badges of accomplishment, Adrian measured his success by the quality of life he could provide for the woman who had sacrificed everything for him. "I have a board meeting at 11, he told her, "but I thought we might have lunch together afterward." "I would like that very much," she replied, her eyes reflecting a love that no amount of money could ever buy. As Adrian walked back toward the house, his phone buzzing with messages from executives and investors, he knew that beneath all his business achievements, his relationship with his mother remained the true foundation of his world. Despite his flourishing business empire, Adrian Vainar felt a profound emptiness in his personal life. The grand halls of his estate echoed with success, but lacked the warmth of companionship. At 42, he yearned for someone to share his life with, a partner, children, the family he had always dreamed of building. When Cassandra entered his world at a charity gala, the connection was immediate. Her emerald eyes sparkled with intelligence, and her laughter seemed to light up the room. Adrian found himself captivated not just by her striking beauty, but by her apparent passion for art and culture. Interests she was quick to mention aligned perfectly with his own. "You've built something remarkable," she told him on their third date, her fingers lightly touching his arm. "But everyone needs someone to share their journey with." Within months, Cassandra had seamlessly integrated herself into Adrian's life. She attended business functions with grace, charmed his associates, and seemed to understand instinctively when he needed space after long days of negotiations. The young woman quickly became a fixture at his estate, her designer clothes soon occupying a section of his walk-in closet. Ara observed this whirlwind romance with quiet reservation. While she smiled warmly whenever her son brought Cassandra for dinner, something about the young woman's demeanor changed subtly when Adrian left the room. A cooling in her eyes, a tightening around her mouth. "She seems lovely," Ara told her son one evening as they shared tea on the balcony, their special ritual since his childhood. "She certainly knows how to make an impression." Adrian missed the careful wording in his mother's assessment, too enraptured by his new relationship to notice her hesitation. "I think she might be the one, Mom," he confessed, his face alight with hope. Ara reached for her son's hand, squeezing it gently. Though her instincts whispered caution, she couldn't bear to dampen his joy. His happiness had always been her priority, from their days in that tiny apartment where she'd worked 3 jobs to keep him in school. "I just want you to be happy, my boy," she said softly. "Take your time to truly know her heart." But Adrian was already planning their future, blind to the calculating glances Cassandra cast at the estate's valuable artwork when she thought no one was watching. His mother's wisdom, for the first time, went unheeded as he rushed toward what he believed was his chance at lasting happiness. Behind Cassandra's dazzling smile lay a carefully constructed facade. Growing up in modest circumstances, she had developed an insatiable hunger for the finer things in life. Her previous relationships followed a pattern, seeking men of means, cultivating their affection, and moving on when better prospects appeared. Adrian Vayner represented her ultimate achievement, a self-made millionaire whose wealth could provide the lifestyle she had always coveted. When they first met at a charity gala, Cassandra had researched him thoroughly. She knew exactly how to present herself, cultured, compassionate, and seemingly genuine. Her calculated charm worked perfectly. Within months, she had secured her place in his life, complete with a stunning engagement ring that she frequently showcased on social media. Around Adrian, Cassandra was the picture of devotion. She listened attentively to his business stories, offered thoughtful gifts, and expressed interest in his philanthropic endeavors. The young woman had perfected the art of mirroring his values, making him believe they shared the same vision for the future. Her performance was flawless, at least when he was watching. Ara, however, began noticing troubling inconsistencies. The first incident occurred when Adrian left for a 3-day business conference. The moment his car disappeared down the driveway, Cassandra's demeanor transformed. Her voice became sharp, her gestures dismissive. When Ara asked about dinner plans, the younger woman merely shrugged and said, "Figure it out yourself. I'm not your caretaker." These cold interactions multiplied. Cassandra would accidentally forget to relay phone messages from Adrian to his mother. She would schedule social events without considering Ara's inclusion. The elderly woman found herself increasingly isolated in her own home, retreating to her quarters to avoid confrontation. What troubled Ara most was not Cassandra's rudeness, but the calculation behind it. The older woman noticed how quickly her future daughter-in-law could switch between cruelty and kindness, depending on who might be watching. During a dinner party, Cassandra loudly offered Ara more wine, appearing attentive, only to whisper moments later, "Don't embarrass us by talking too much." For Cassandra, Ara represented an inconvenient attachment to Adrian's past, a constant reminder of his humble beginnings. The mother's presence contradicted the narrative of effortless privilege that Cassandra wished to project. Moreover, she resented how Adrian consulted his mother on important decisions, viewing their bond as competition for his attention and resources. Despite these mounting concerns, Ara remained silent. She feared that forcing Adrian to choose would only cause him pain. Instead, she weathered the subtle hostility, hoping that eventually her son would recognize Cassandra's true nature without her intervention. With Adrian Vayner away on another business trip, the grand estate transformed into a different world entirely. The moment his car disappeared down the driveway, Cassandra's elegant posture would slacken, her smile vanishing like mist in sunlight. The mask she wore so perfectly in his presence slipped away, revealing the cold calculation beneath. "Your tea is getting cold," Aura remarked one morning, her weathered hands wrapped around her own cup as they sat in the breakfast nook. Cassandra's eyes narrowed. "I don't recall asking for your commentary on my beverages," she snapped, deliberately knocking Aura's walking stick to the floor with her foot as she stood. "Oops," she added without a hint of remorse, watching the elderly woman struggle to retrieve it. These moments multiplied with each of Adrian's absences. Cassandra would move Aura's medicines to higher shelves, claiming she was organizing when questioned. She'd turn down the thermostat, despite knowing how the cold affected the older woman's joints. When household staff inquired about Aura's discomfort, Cassandra dismissed their concerns with practiced charm. "Mother dear is just being dramatic again," she would say with a tinkling laugh that never reached her eyes. "You know how the elderly exaggerate." The most cutting attacks were verbal. Cassandra would remind Aura that she was merely baggage from Adrian's past life. "Once we're married," she'd whisper when they were alone, "I'll convince him you'd be happier in a facility, somewhere appropriate for your station." Despite this treatment, Adrian's mother endured in silence. Each night, she'd sit at her window, fingers tracing the silver frame, holding a photograph of her son as a child. Her eyes would well with tears, not for herself, but for him. She feared what revealing Cassandra's true nature would do to his happiness. "He deserves love," she whispered to herself, tucking away another day's worth of small cruelties like secrets. Perhaps she will change. Aura clung to this hope, thin as it was. She remembered how poverty had hardened her own heart once, before motherhood softened it. Perhaps wealth was doing the same to Cassandra in reverse. Perhaps, with time, love would thaw the ice in her future daughter-in-law's veins. So she endured the hidden slights, the accidentally spilled tea on her favorite books, the whispered insults. She would not force her son to choose between the woman he believed would bring him happiness and the mother who had already given him everything she could. What Aura couldn't know was that fate had already set in motion events that would soon bring this silent suffering to light. The morning sun filtered through the estate's towering windows as Adrian Vaynar made an unexpected decision. His business meeting in the city could wait. Today belonged to his mother. After 3 weeks of constant travel and negotiations, the successful entrepreneur felt a sudden, irresistible pull toward home. Aura had sounded tired during their last phone call, her voice carrying that slight tremor that always worried him. "Cancel everything," he instructed his assistant over the phone while selecting a bouquet of white lilies, Aura's favorites, from the florist near his office. The shopkeeper smiled knowingly. Adrian's devotion to his mother was well known among local businesses he frequented. Driving back to his estate, he planned the afternoon in his mind. They would have tea on the east balcony, where the sunlight was gentlest, and he would tell her about the new charitable foundation he was establishing. Her wisdom would be invaluable in shaping its direction. The wrought iron gates of the mansion swung open silently as his vehicle approached. Adrian parked away from the main entrance, wanting to surprise Aura completely. Clutching the fragrant bouquet, he used his personal key to enter through the garden door. His footsteps quiet against the polished marble floors. The familiar scent of home welcomed him, a mixture of lemon polish, fresh flowers, and the subtle perfume his mother preferred. But something else hung in the air. Tension, discord, a disturbance in the usual tranquility of their shared sanctuary. Adrian paused, his senses suddenly alert. Voices echoed from the main hall, one sharp and cutting, the other softer, pleading. His heart quickened as he recognized them both. Moving through the corridor with increasing urgency, the self-made millionaire felt a cold dread spreading through his chest. The marble hallway seemed to stretch endlessly as the voices grew clearer, more distinct. Cassandra's tone carried a harshness he had never heard before, or perhaps had never allowed himself to hear. Era's gentle voice responded, barely audible, but clearly distressed. The contrast between them, his fiancée's cutting words and his mother's gentle replies, created a dissonance that shattered the peaceful homecoming he had imagined. Adrian quickened his pace, the lilies clutched tightly in his hand, their stems bending slightly under his unconscious pressure. The corridor opened into the grand foyer with its sweeping staircase, the heart of the home he had built from years of determination and hard work. He rounded the corner, anticipation and dread mingling in his chest. Whatever awaited him would change everything, though he couldn't possibly know just how completely his world was about to transform. The son moved forward, unaware that in moments the foundations of love and trust he had carefully constructed would crumble beneath his feet. Adrian Vayner turned the corner near the grand staircase, his footsteps silenced by the plush carpeting that lined the marble halls of his estate. The bouquet of vibrant flowers, clutched in his hand, was meant to bring joy to his mother's eyes, a small token of the immeasurable love between them. But what he witnessed instead would forever be seared into his memory. There, at the bottom of the staircase, stood Cassandra, her elegant features twisted with contempt, her manicured hand raised threateningly. Ara cowered before her, the elderly woman's frail body hunched protectively over her walking stick as she attempted to shield herself from her future daughter-in-law's wrath. "You're nothing but a burden in this house," Cassandra hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "Why don't you just disappear already? Do you think Adrian really wants to spend his fortune taking care of some helpless old woman?" The millionaire stood frozen, unable to process the scene unfolding before him. His mother, the woman who had sacrificed everything so he could succeed, trembled as she gripped her walking stick tighter, her eyes reflecting not just fear, but a profound sadness. "Please, Cassandra," Ara whispered. "Adrian will be home soon." "I don't care," his fiancée spat back, reaching out to shove the older woman's shoulder. "When he's gone, this is my house, and I won't have you limping around, reminding everyone of his common origins." The bouquet slipped from Adrian's grasp, hitting the marble floor with a soft thud that echoed through the suddenly silent hall. Both women turned, Cassandra's face instantly draining of color as she realized her carefully constructed facade had shattered beyond repair. "Adrian," she gasped, her voice transforming with remarkable speed from cruelty to sweetness. "I didn't expect you home so." But the wealthy businessman couldn't hear her words over the roaring in his ears. His entire world tilted as reality crashed down around him. The woman he had planned to marry, who had shared his bed and his dreams, stood exposed in her true nature, cruel, calculating, and heartless toward the person he cherished most. His mother's eyes met his, filled not with accusation but with sorrow, not for herself, but for him, for the pain she knew this revelation would cause her beloved son. That selfless concern, even in her moment of vulnerability, made the betrayal before him all the more devastating. The flowers lay scattered across the floor, their bright colors a stark contrast to the darkness that had invaded his home. In that moment, Adrian understood that some illusions, once shattered, could never be restored. In that singular, devastating moment, the carefully crafted illusions Adrian Vayner had built around his relationship shattered like fine crystal against marble. The woman he had chosen, the one he had planned to make his wife and build a family with, stood revealed in the harsh light of truth. Cassandra's mask had slipped completely, exposing not the loving partner he believed in, but a cruel opportunist who would harm the most vulnerable person in his life. "What are you doing?" The words tore from his throat, raw and primal. Cassandra whirled around, her face transforming instantly from rage to shock. The transition was so practiced, so seamless, that Adrian realized with sickening clarity This wasn't the first time she had switched personas, only the first time he had witnessed it. "Adrian, I didn't expect you until tomorrow," she stammered, her voice suddenly honeyed, her hands dropping to her sides. "Your mother fell. I was just helping her." "Don't." The single word cut through her explanation like a blade. "I saw everything. I heard everything." His entire body trembled as he moved forward, placing himself between Cassandra and Ara. The storm inside him raged with such intensity that he could barely form coherent thoughts. How long had this been happening? How many times had his mother suffered while he was away, building a fortune he thought would secure their happiness? Ara reached for his arm, her fingers trembling against the expensive fabric of his suit. "Son, please," she whispered, her eyes pleading not for herself, but for him. Always for him, even now. The self-made millionaire felt tears burning behind his eyes as rage and heartbreak warred within him. Everything he thought he knew about his life, about his future, about the woman he loved, had been a carefully constructed lie. The betrayal cut deeper than any business setback or financial loss ever could. "Get away from her," he commanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper as he addressed Cassandra. "Don't touch her. Don't speak to her." The wealthy man who had negotiated billion-dollar deals with composure now struggled to maintain control as he helped his mother to a nearby chair, noticing how she winced with each step. His protective instincts roared to life, fueled by guilt and anguish. "Adrian, you're overreacting," Cassandra tried again, her beautiful features arranged in an expression of concern that now seemed grotesque in its falsity. "If you just let me explain." "There's nothing to explain." His voice broke as he turned to face her, the woman he had believed would be his partner in life. "I saw who you really are, and I wish to God I had seen it sooner." Cassandra's face drained of color as she froze mid-motion, her hands still suspended in the air. The realization that Adrian had witnessed her true nature crashed over her like ice water. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled in an instant, leaving only the naked truth of her character exposed in the marble hallway. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "I can explain." But there was nothing to explain. The scene spoke volumes. Ara trembling against her walking stick, Cassandra's face contorted with the remnants of rage, and the cruel words still hanging in the air between them. Ara's weathered hands clutched her walking stick tighter, steadying herself as tears welled in her gentle eyes. Yet those tears weren't shed for the pain she had endured, or the indignities suffered at Cassandra's hands. They fell for her son, for the heartbreak she saw etching itself across his face, for the shattering of his dreams and trust. "My boy," Ara murmured, reaching toward him with one shaking hand. The gesture was so tender, so protective, even now in her vulnerability. Her first thought was for her son's well-being. The bouquet lay scattered across the polished floor, petals crushed beneath the weight of the moment. Adrian stood motionless, his breathing shallow, eyes moving between the two women who represented such different parts of his life, one who had sacrificed everything for him, and one who had been willing to sacrifice her for status. A heavy silence descended upon the grand space, broken only by the sound of Ara's labored breathing. The opulent surroundings, the crystal chandelier, the imported marble, the priceless artwork, suddenly seemed hollow and meaningless against the human drama unfolding beneath them. "How long?" Adrian finally asked, his voice thick with emotion. "How long has this been happening?" Cassandra stepped backward, her designer heels clicking against the floor. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under," she began, desperation creeping into her tone. "Living up to expectations, trying to fit into your world." "My world?" he interrupted, his voice rising. "My world has always been her." He gestured toward his mother, the woman who had worked multiple jobs to keep him fed, who had gone without so he could have opportunities, whose love had never been conditional on his success. Ara reached for her son's arm, steadying herself against him. The tears continued to stream down her face as she witnessed the painful awakening in her beloved child's eyes. She had endured Cassandra's cruelty in silence, hoping to protect him from exactly this moment of devastating clarity. The truth stood naked before them all, that the woman Adrian had loved had never truly existed. The days that followed the incident were among the hardest Adrian Vainar had ever faced. The memory of his mother cowering beneath Cassandra's wrath replayed in his mind like a nightmare that refused to fade. Without hesitation, he ended his engagement to Cassandra immediately, returning the diamond ring that once symbolized their future together. His resolve remained absolute, despite the hollow ache that had settled in his chest. "It's over," he told her, his voice steady but strained with emotion. "I won't share my life with someone who could treat my mother that way." Cassandra's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. Desperate to maintain her place in Adrian's world and the luxury his wealth provided, she cycled through every tactic in her arsenal. First came the tears, dramatic, heaving sobs as she collapsed onto the plush sofa in his study. "It was a misunderstanding," she pleaded, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "I was just trying to help her take her medicine. You know how stubborn Aura can be." When tears failed to move him, Cassandra's tactics shifted. She tried justifying her actions, claiming Aura had provoked her with constant criticism and interference in their relationship. "She never wanted us to be together," she insisted, her voice hardening. "She's manipulating you to choose between us." Adrian simply shook his head. "I saw what I saw. I heard what you said to her." In a final desperate attempt, his ex-fiancée switched to promises of change and redemption. "I can be better," she whispered, reaching for his hand. "We can work through this. I'll apologize to her. I'll make it right." But the wealthy businessman had already made his decision. His mother's dignity and well-being were not up for negotiation. The woman who had sacrificed everything for him deserved nothing less than absolute respect and kindness, especially from someone who claimed to love him. "Please leave," he said finally, gesturing toward the door. "Your things will be packed and sent to whatever address you provide." As Cassandra realized the finality of his decision, her beautiful features twisted with rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed, gathering her designer handbag. "No one will ever love you like I did." Adrian watched her storm out of the mansion, knowing that what she had offered was never love at all. That night he sat with Era on the balcony, both nursing cups of tea as the sun set over the estate grounds. Neither spoke of Cassandra, but when his mother gently squeezed his hand, Adrian knew he had made the right choice, however painful. The news of Adrian Vainar's sudden breakup with Cassandra sent ripples through their social circles. Phone calls, text messages, and hushed conversations at exclusive restaurants all centered around one question. What could have possibly gone wrong between the golden couple? "They seemed so perfect together," whispered former acquaintances at charity galas. "I heard she's devastated," others claimed, though none had actually spoken to either party directly. The speculation grew wilder with each retelling. Affairs, financial troubles, family interference, none coming close to the heartbreaking truth. Adrian weathered the storm of gossip with quiet dignity. He offered no public explanations, no dramatic social media posts, no interviews to set the record straight. His silence only fueled more curiosity, but the businessman understood that some matters deserved privacy, especially when they involved his mother's dignity. At his office, colleagues noticed the change in him. The easy smile had faded, replaced by a more contemplative demeanor. Yet there was also a new clarity in his eyes, the look of someone who had seen through an elaborate illusion and found unexpected freedom on the other side. "I thought I knew her," he confided to his most trusted friend over coffee one afternoon. 4 years together, and I never truly saw who she was until that moment." The memory of Cassandra's cruelty toward Aura still burned fresh in his mind, impossible to reconcile with the woman he thought he'd loved. What troubled him most wasn't the public speculation or even his own heartbreak, but the realization that character exists in layers. The Cassandra who charmed at dinner parties and supported his business ventures was the same person who, behind closed doors, tormented an elderly woman who couldn't defend herself. The facade had been flawless. Her practiced smile, her seemingly genuine interest in his family, her apparent kindness. Yet when no one was watching, or so she thought, her true nature emerged. This revelation forced Adrian to question everything. How many other relationships in his life were built on appearances rather than substance? As weeks passed, the whispers gradually subsided. Society found new gossip, new couples to admire, new scandals to dissect. But for Adrian, the lesson remained indelible. He began evaluating people not by their public personas, but by how they treated those who could offer them nothing in return. True character, Ara had told him one evening, as they sat together on the balcony, is what happens when no one important is watching. Her wisdom, born from a lifetime of quiet observation, had proven prophetic. In losing what he thought was love, Adrian had gained something far more valuable, the ability to see beyond the dazzling surface to the truth that lies beneath. In the aftermath of his broken engagement, Adrian Vainar transformed his priorities completely. The millionaire who once spent countless hours building his empire now rearranged his entire schedule to be present for his mother. Business meetings were postponed, international trips delegated to trusted associates, and conference calls scheduled only during hours when Ara was resting. "I should have been more attentive," he confessed one evening, as he gently applied ointment to the bruises that had yet to fade from his mother's arm. The marks of Cassandra's cruelty were still visible, each one a painful reminder of his failure to protect her. Ara simply smiled, her eyes reflecting the wisdom that had guided them through poverty years ago. "You cannot be everywhere at once, my son," she whispered, patting his hand reassuringly. Every morning, they established a ritual that became sacred to them both. Before the estate staff arrived, Adrian would prepare Ara's favorite jasmine tea himself, carrying the delicate porcelain cups to the east-facing balcony where they would watch the sunrise together. The marble balustrade, once merely an architectural feature of his luxurious home, now framed their most precious moments. "Do you remember that tiny apartment we had when you were studying?" Ara asked one morning, steam rising from her cup as the first golden rays touched the horizon. "How we could hear the neighbors arguing through those paper-thin walls." Adrian laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in weeks. "And how you would make tea in that dented pot, pretending we were royalty having a formal ceremony." These quiet conversations healed them both. As days passed into weeks, the devoted son realized how much he had taken for granted. While building his fortune, he had assumed providing financial security was enough. Now he understood that presence, genuine, attentive presence, was the true currency of love. He installed additional safety features throughout the mansion, ensuring his mother could move freely without fear of falling. Her medications were organized meticulously, and he personally interviewed 3 companions who would provide company during his unavoidable absences. "You're hovering," Ara teased him gently, when he insisted on accompanying her on her daily walk through the estate gardens. "I'm making up for lost time," he replied, offering his arm as support. The household staff noticed the change in their employer. The man who had once been politely distant now knew their names, asked about their families, and ensured they were treated with the same respect he showed his mother. The mansion, once a showpiece of wealth, was transforming into something far more valuable, a true home where dignity and kindness reigned supreme. The weight of guilt pressed against Adrian Vainar's chest like a physical burden. Each morning, as he watched his mother slowly make her way across the marble halls of their estate, leaning on her walking stick, the same thought tormented him. He had failed to protect her when she needed him most. "I should have seen through Cassandra's facade," he confessed one evening as they sat together on the balcony overlooking the garden. "All those business trips, all those times I left you alone with her." His voice cracked with emotion as he poured himself another cup of tea. Ara reached across the table and placed her weathered hand over his. "My son, you cannot blame yourself for trusting someone you loved." But the self-reproach continued to haunt him. Adrian found himself canceling meetings to stay home, checking his mother's medicines personally each morning, and asking the household staff to report any changes in her condition. The millionaire who once commanded boardrooms with confidence now second-guessed his every decision, wondering what else he might have overlooked. "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed," he admitted during their evening ritual of watching the sunset. "The way she would change the subject whenever I mentioned your health, how she always seemed irritated when I suggested bringing you along to events." His mother listened patiently, her eyes reflecting wisdom born from decades of hardship and resilience. "We see what we want to see in those we love," she said softly. "It is the nature of hope." Sleep eluded Adrian for weeks. He would pace the corridors of his mansion at night, replaying every interaction with his former fiancée, searching for clues he should have recognized. The wealth that surrounded him felt hollow when measured against his failure to ensure his mother's safety in her own home. One evening, as rain tapped gently against the windows, Ara found him staring blankly at family photographs in the study. She approached slowly, her walking stick making a familiar rhythm against the hardwood floor. "Adrian," she said, using his full name as she had when he was a child needing guidance. "You came back when it mattered most." Her eyes, though aged, shone with unconditional love. "That is enough for me." The simple statement penetrated the armor of his self-recrimination. Tears welled in his eyes as he embraced the woman who had sacrificed everything for him throughout his childhood. "But I should have," he began. "No," Ara interrupted gently. "Love is not measured by our mistakes, but by how we mend them." She squeezed his hand. "And you, my son, have always known how to make things right." The months following the broken engagement brought a profound transformation to Adrian Vaynar's life. What could have remained a period of bitterness and resentment instead blossomed into something unexpected, a complete realignment of his values and purpose. As winter turned to spring, Adrian found himself viewing his wealth and accomplishments through an entirely different lens. "Money is just paper if it doesn't create happiness for those you love," he told Ara one evening as they shared tea on the balcony of their estate. His mother nodded, her eyes reflecting the wisdom that had sustained them both through decades of challenges. The millionaire began making subtle but meaningful changes to his business operations. During a quarterly review meeting, he surprised his executive team by focusing not on profit margins, but on employee well-being. "From today, we implement comprehensive health care for all staff members and their families," he announced, remembering how illness had once threatened his mother when they couldn't afford proper care. His leadership style evolved as he made a point to know the names of janitors and security guards alongside those of his directors. The businessman scheduled regular lunches with employees from different departments, listening to their concerns and ideas with genuine interest. When the accounting department head mentioned her daughter's struggle with college tuition, Adrian established an education fund for employees' children the following week. At home, he and Ara spent evenings discussing how his companies could better serve their communities. "The betrayal I experienced opened my eyes," he confided to his mother. "I was measuring success by numbers in a bank account when I should have been measuring it by the lives we touch." The man who had once pursued wealth relentlessly now pursued meaning with the same determination. He revised supplier contracts to ensure ethical practices, even when it meant accepting lower profit margins. When a longtime business partner questioned these changes, Adrian simply replied, "I've learned that how we treat people matters more than what we gain from them." His mother watched this transformation with quiet pride. One morning, as Adrian prepared for work, Ara touched his hand gently. "You've always been wealthy in the ways that truly matter," she said. "Now you're helping others see that too." The pain of Cassandra's betrayal hadn't disappeared, but it had crystallized into something valuable. A compass guiding him toward authenticity. Each decision, each interaction, each business deal now passed through the filter of compassion he'd learned through hardship. The lessons of betrayal had become the foundation for a life of genuine purpose. Adrian Vainar found himself drawn to a purpose greater than accumulating wealth. His mother's quiet strength had always been his moral compass, but now her wisdom became the foundation for something transformative. Those who have no voice need champions. Ara had told him one evening as they watched the sunset from the estate's balcony. Her words resonated deeply. Within months, Adrian established the Vainar Foundation for Elder Dignity. The millionaire redirected substantial portions of his fortune to create safe havens for elderly individuals without family support. These weren't mere facilities, but communities designed with warmth and respect at their core. "Everyone deserves to age with dignity," he explained at the foundation's launch, his voice steady with conviction. The businessman who once chased deals now pursued something far more valuable: meaningful change in how society treated its most vulnerable members. Ara became an integral part of these efforts. Despite her own health challenges, she insisted on visiting each new center, offering insights only someone with her life experience could provide. "The chairs need to face the windows," she would suggest, or the dining tables should be round to encourage conversation. Her practical compassion shaped every aspect of their work. Together, mother and son developed programs that paired elderly residents with local students, creating intergenerational bonds that benefited everyone involved. The young people gained wisdom. The elders received companionship and purpose. This initiative became the foundation's most celebrated achievement. Adrian found himself working longer hours than ever, but the exhaustion felt different, purposeful rather than draining. He hired specialists in gerontology and social work, insisting they approach their roles with genuine empathy. "We're not just providing services," he told his staff. "We're honoring lives." The local media soon took notice. Articles featured the foundation's innovative approach, but Adrian deflected personal praise. "This is my mother's vision," he would say, directing attention to Ara's gentle influence rather than his financial contributions. On quiet evenings, Adrian and Ara would review letters from families whose lives had been touched by their work. They kept these messages in a leather-bound book, a tangible reminder of the ripple effects of compassion. "I never imagined my worst moment would lead to so much good," Adrian confessed one night. Ara squeezed his hand. "That's how healing works," she replied. "It transforms pain into purpose." For the first time since the betrayal, Adrian felt truly wealthy, not in currency, but in meaning. His calendar, once filled with acquisition meetings, now overflowed with community engagements and foundation events. The man who had everything discovered that giving was the greatest possession of all. In the quiet moments between his philanthropic projects and business responsibilities, Adrian Vainar found himself healing in ways he hadn't anticipated. The betrayal that had once threatened to consume him gradually transformed into wisdom that guided his steps forward. Though the memory of Cassandra's cruelty toward his mother still caused his chest to tighten, the raw pain had begun to dull, replaced by a profound understanding of human nature. "Some lessons cost more than others," he told Ara one evening, as they shared tea on the balcony of their estate. The setting sun cast a golden glow across the gardens below, painting everything in warm hues that reminded him of his mother's unwavering spirit. Ara reached across the small table between them and placed her weathered hand over his. "But those are the lessons that change us for the better," she replied, her eyes reflecting wisdom earned through decades of perseverance. Their relationship had evolved in beautiful, unexpected ways. where once Adrian had been the provider, ensuring his mother wanted for nothing materially. They now existed in a partnership of mutual support. He sought her counsel on business matters, valuing her intuition about people and situations. She, in turn, found renewed purpose in helping shape the charitable foundation he had established. On weekends, they would often visit the elderly care centers they supported, Ara connecting effortlessly with residents while her son observed with quiet pride. The woman who had once been treated as disposable by his former fiancé now stood as a beacon of compassion that others naturally gravitated toward. "You know what I've realized?" Adrian confided to his mother as they drove home from one such visit. "True wealth isn't what I thought it was." The older woman smiled knowingly. "And what is it then?" "The ability to trust again after being hurt," he answered, his voice steady despite the emotion behind his words. "To find joy in simple moments rather than grand gestures." Their shared experience of betrayal and recovery had created an unbreakable bond between them. Where there might have been bitterness, they had chosen growth. Where there might have been isolation, they had chosen connection. Each morning, Adrian woke with increasing lightness in his heart. The mansion that had once felt tainted by Cassandra's presence had been reclaimed through new memories and genuine laughter. The scars remained, as scars do, but they no longer defined him. Instead, they served as reminders of his capacity to overcome, to forgive himself for his blindness, and to recognize authentic love when it presented itself. In healing alongside his mother, Adrian discovered that some bonds grow stronger when tested by fire. Cassandra's life spiraled into disarray with astonishing speed. Without Adrian Vaynar's wealth to cushion her existence, the carefully constructed facade she had maintained began to crumble. Her apartment, modest compared to the estate she had nearly secured, now seemed like a prison of mediocrity. Each morning, she woke to the harsh reality that her golden ticket had been irrevocably torn. The invitations that once flooded her mailbox dwindled to nothing. Former friends who had eagerly accepted her company when she was on Adrian's arm now screened her calls. The society pages that had once featured her radiant smile at charity galas no longer mentioned her name. She had become invisible to the very world she had desperately fought to conquer. "I don't understand," she whispered to her reflection one evening, her fingers tracing the designer dress she could no longer afford to replace. It wasn't supposed to end this way. Her credit cards were declined at boutiques where staff had once fawned over her. The woman who had treated Arrow with such contempt now faced similar disdain from those who had discovered the truth behind her broken engagement. Rumors spread quickly in elite circles, and the story of her cruelty toward an elderly woman had turned her into a pariah. Cassandra attempted damage control, reaching out to mutual acquaintances, trying to spin a narrative that painted her as misunderstood. But her efforts fell flat. The social climber found herself sliding back down the ladder she had so painstakingly ascended. Job interviews ended abruptly when potential employers recognized her name from the whispered scandal. One rainy afternoon, she stood outside Adrian's estate, watching from across the street as he helped his mother into a car. The tenderness in his movements, the genuine smile they shared, it was a kind of wealth she had never understood or valued. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if she could have found happiness in that authenticity, rather than in the trappings of luxury she had pursued. The rain soaked through her once expensive coat as Cassandra turned away, understanding too late that she had sacrificed something priceless for trinkets that now slipped through her fingers. Her apartment grew emptier as she sold possessions to maintain appearances. Each item that disappeared was another reminder of what her ambition had cost her. In the end, the woman who had valued status above all else found herself utterly alone, surrounded by the hollow echoes of what might have been. Her downfall was not merely financial, but a complete collapse of the identity she had crafted. Without Adrian's fortune to define her worth, Cassandra was forced to face the emptiness at her core. In the wake of his broken engagement, Adrian Vainar found himself reassessing the very meaning of wealth. The marble halls and opulent rooms of his estate, once symbols of his success, now seemed hollow without genuine connection. As he watched Ara tending to her small garden on the mansion's eastern terrace, her hands gently caressing the blooming flowers despite her physical limitations, he understood what truly mattered. The balance sheet of life isn't measured in currency, Ara told him one evening as they shared tea on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of amber and gold. It's calculated in moments like these. The self-made millionaire nodded, letting her wisdom sink deep into his heart. While his business empire continued to flourish, Adrian found himself measuring success differently. The respect of his employees, who now looked at him with genuine admiration rather than mere deference, felt more valuable than any quarterly profit report. He began hosting monthly dinners at the estate, not for business associates or social climbers, but for his staff and their families. The mansion that had once been a showpiece became a place of warmth and genuine laughter. Children ran through corridors that had previously echoed with Cassandra's cold ambition, bringing life to spaces that had felt oddly empty despite their grandeur. Ara thrived in this new atmosphere, her gentle presence a reminder of the values that had shaped Adrian long before wealth entered their lives. She became the heart of these gatherings, sharing stories from their humbler days that reminded everyone that character transcends circumstance. "You've built something far more precious than a fortune," she told her son, squeezing his hand with surprising strength for a woman her age. "You've built a life of integrity." The businessman found that his professional decisions came more easily now, guided by principles rather than profit margins alone. He declined partnerships that would have been lucrative but ethically questionable, and invested in ventures that uplifted communities rather than merely exploiting markets. At night, when the estate quieted and Adrian walked through his home, he no longer saw it as a testament to what he owned. Instead, it represented an opportunity to share, to protect, to nurture. The walls that had witnessed betrayal now witnessed healing and growth. "I may be worth millions on paper," Adrian confided to his mother one morning as they watched the sunrise together. "But I'm richest when I remember what you taught me about compassion." Ara smiled, her eyes reflecting wisdom earned through decades of both hardship and joy. "Then you are wealthy beyond measure, my son." The lessons that Adrian Vainar learned through his ordeal weren't merely personal. They resonated with universal truths about human character and dignity. As he sat beside Ara on their favorite balcony overlooking the estate grounds, he understood that the true measure of a person wasn't found in their bank accounts or social connections, but in how they treated those who could offer nothing in return. "You know," Ara said softly, her weathered hand resting on her walking stick, "sometimes life's hardest moments become our greatest teachers." Adrian nodded, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues that no amount of money could purchase. His mother's wisdom had always been his true inheritance, more valuable than any business acquisition or property deed. In the months since Cassandra's departure, he'd reflected deeply on how easily he had been deceived by surface charm. The painful betrayal had stripped away his illusions about status and appearance, revealing what truly mattered. While his wealth had attracted many to his circle, it was kindness and integrity that determined who deserved to stay there. The millionaire now evaluated his business partnerships and friendships through this new lens. Several associates expressed surprise at his transformed priorities, but those who shared his values remained, forming deeper connections than before. "Beauty eventually fades," Ara often reminded him, "and fortunes can be lost overnight. But how we treat others, especially the vulnerable, that defines who we truly are." This philosophy became the cornerstone of Adrian's life, He instituted compassionate policies at his companies, ensuring employees could care for aging parents without fear of losing their positions. The son who had once been focused primarily on expansion and profit margins, now considered the human impact of every decision. His story began circulating among business circles, not as gossip about a failed engagement, but as an example of principled leadership. Young entrepreneurs sought his mentorship, drawn not just to his financial success, but to the moral compass that now guided his empire. Through the darkest period of betrayal, Adrian had found his way back to the foundation of his being, the unconditional love his mother had always shown him. The pain had transformed him into someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more compassionate. Sometimes, he told a gathering of business students during a rare speaking engagement, we must lose what we thought we wanted to discover what we truly need. The journey had come full circle. From the boy who once had nothing, to the man who had everything but happiness, to finally becoming someone rich in both resources and heart. Adrian had become a beacon of compassion in a world too often blinded by superficial success. The story of Adrian Vanar reminds us that beneath the glittering surface of wealth and success, the true measure of a person lies in how they treat those who depend on them. When Adrian discovered Cassandra's cruelty toward his mother, Ara, he made a choice that many find difficult. He chose family over convenience, compassion over status, and integrity over appearances. If this account has touched your heart and rekindled your belief in the power of familial bonds, we invite you to support our mission at Kindness Corner. Every subscription, like, and share helps us continue bringing these powerful narratives of human dignity to light. These aren't just stories, they're reflections of the choices we all face in our own lives. The wealthy businessman's journey from betrayal to renewed purpose demonstrates how adversity can transform us into better versions of ourselves. Through his pain, Adrian rediscovered what truly matters, the gentle woman who had sacrificed everything for him throughout his childhood. His devotion to his mother ultimately led him to a more meaningful existence than any luxury his fortune could buy. We're curious about your perspective on forgiveness and betrayal. Would you have found it in your heart to forgive someone like Cassandra if you were in Adrian's position? Or do you believe that certain acts of cruelty, especially toward vulnerable loved ones, represent a line that once crossed cannot be uncrossed? Some might argue that everyone deserves a second chance, while others maintain that character, once revealed, rarely changes fundamentally. Your thoughts on this matter aren't just comments. They're valuable contributions to an important conversation about values, boundaries, and the meaning of family. When you share your perspective, you help others reflect on their own relationships and the standards they uphold within them. The estate that once witnessed such cruelty became a sanctuary of healing for both mother and son. Their story continues to inspire those who hear it, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of love. Before we conclude this chapter, remember that compassion isn't just a virtue. It's a choice we make every day, in ways both large and small. Years after that fateful day when Adrian Vanar discovered Cassandra's true nature, his estate remained as magnificent as ever. Yet something fundamental had changed within its marble halls. What once stood as a monument to financial success had transformed into a sanctuary of compassion and genuine connection. Visitors to the Vanar home often remarked on the warmth that permeated the space. The self-made millionaire had replaced ostentatious displays of wealth with thoughtful touches that honored relationships and memories. Photographs of Adrian with Ara lined the hallways, capturing moments of simple joy between mother and son. Material things come and go, Adrian often told business associates who sought his mentorship, but how we treat others defines our true worth. His words carried the weight of hard-won wisdom, resonating with those fortunate enough to hear them. Ara, now comfortable in her golden years, had become something of a beloved matriarch to the staff who worked at the estate. The elderly woman's gentle guidance and kind spirit influenced everyone around her. Mother and son had established a foundation that provided support for elderly individuals without families, ensuring no one faced mistreatment or neglect as Ara once had. Their story gradually spread beyond their immediate circle, not as tabloid fodder about a broken engagement, but as an inspiring testament to choosing integrity over appearances. Several families of wealth sought Adrian's counsel on raising children who valued character above status. The businessman's approach to his companies evolved as well. He implemented compassionate policies that recognized employees as whole people with families and needs beyond the workplace. His businesses thrived not despite these policies, but because of them. Loyalty and dedication flourished where respect was the foundation. Cassandra eventually faded into obscurity, her pursuit of status leaving her with neither wealth nor meaningful connections. Meanwhile, Adrian found contentment not in romantic love but in the deep bonds of friendship and family that sustained him. On Ara's 80th birthday, surrounded by people whose lives they had touched, she squeezed her son's hand and whispered, "You've built something far greater than fortune." Adrian nodded, understanding completely. His journey had taught him that true wealth couldn't be measured in bank accounts or possessions. It existed in moments of kindness, in standing up for what's right, and in valuing people for who they are rather than what they can provide. In a world that often measures success by material accumulation, Adrian Vainar stood as living proof that the richest people are those who give freely of their compassion, who protect the vulnerable, and who recognize that love, not luxury, creates the legacy that matters most.